Now, our next guest, when I talked to him about being a guest on our show, one of the first things that we discussed is the concept of the show and how in today's economy the consumer is looking to, or you, our community, are looking to save money. I mean, money is tight and you want to get the most out of it. And one of the problems with that is there's a lot of these low-price advertisements that suck you in with a low-price guarantee, but then you get inferior service or inferior products, and by the time you get done replacing them and repairing them, you wind up having paid more than had you just gone to the right place the first time. Well, when I was talking to our next guest, Dave Capurro with CNC Automotive Specialties, it really got under his skin, and it was really, for me, a testimony from a business that cares the same way we do about our community. And, Dave, welcome to our show, by the way.
Morning, Mitch, and listeners.
You had this when we talked about the consumer and how many times you and I have seen it over the years where they go somewhere, they get inferior products or services, and then they come to you. How much that bothered you? It was a personal outcry from you, if I would like to refer to it that way. What do you attribute it to? What's happening to our community, and what recommendations would you make for them?
Well, I think one of the reasons it's happening is everybody's trying to economize and minimize their expense. I get that. A large part of that is everybody's money's tight. So you do what you have to do to get by. As far as how you minimize it, you've got to make your choices better, and you can do that.
Well, and that's what really I loved about what you said is it really bothered you when people come to you, and there's a story you're going to tell about that a little later on, that it just offends you when they go somewhere and they don't get their money's worth, that you really relish the opportunity to come on our show and be a spokesperson for how to not have that happen, that you relish that opportunity. Tell us a little bit about your background in the industry.
Well, I was in engineering school in the late 80s and decided that when I was told that engineers really didn't need to know how to make things, and application engineering really wasn't their thing, maybe that wasn't the field for me. So I went into the automotive industry, and with a real passion for it, a lot of experience with engineering stuff, and then went to engine school at University of Colorado. Learned a lot and have a background in engines and their design and most of the workings of them, to a tune of about 10 years of training.
Well, and this is really where expertise comes from. And it's not just that. It's that, a lot of people can go to a class and they can get trained on how to disassemble and reassemble an engine, but your education in building engines and the quality of engines, by the way, that you put out of your shop, are well known to many people in our community. And for the ones that don't, they really need to understand where that comes from. You have specific training just in parts selection process of that. And share what that means to a consumer. It's not just who makes the part, it's the capabilities of each component within the internal parts of a combustion engine.
Yeah, the specifications for how you're going to use it, what the durability is, what kind of fuel mileage it needs to get, what kind of fuel you're going to burn, what use it's going to see.
Well, and you really can cover all the uses from a regular street to off-road to racetrack.
Correct.
And is this a fair question to ask? What's the highest horsepower motor you've ever put out of your shop?
It was for a marine application. It was a big block, 960 horsepower flywheel.
Okay, so yeah. I think we have the capability to build you whatever you want. That's the bottom line here. And you talked about the part selection process and durability, but you were even sharing with me that it comes right down to the gauge of the steel and the components and their life expectancy, and making sure that each of those matched. That if you put the wrong internal two parts together and one had the capability was stronger than the other, it could destroy the other one. That it's matching those components internally.
There's sensible matching, and then there's you picked it out of a catalog because it was a price you thought was reasonable or a specification you thought was right. I said, it's a process. The selection of the components dictates some of the other components that you're going to use, and they fall in order. Well, kind of like putting your shoes and socks on. You don't put your shoes on first.
Yeah, absolutely not. Well, one of the other things that you have an extraordinary background in that really sets you apart in the industry is in the auto diagnostics field is your electronics background. And today's cars are so computerized. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you have seen this yourself, that people go somewhere and they go to what I call a code reader. They plug into the computer and they get a code and they assume that this code's going to tell them the problem. But if you're not aware of the electronics and knowledgeable about those, you may be misdiagnosing it and repairing the wrong part completely.
Codes lead you in a direction, and that's pretty much what they're intended to do. They by no means plug into your car and tell you exactly what's wrong. And the cars are complicated. They're mechatronic machines on wheels.
And if they're not taken to the right place, they can either be misdiagnosed or they can even cause further damage to the electronics in the car.
Well, sure. And part of what consumers, I hear consumers want to reduce their cost, but at some point, cars cost something to drive. And we try to do most of our production stuff based on what it costs per mile to keep your car on the road. So if you have to budget something for that.
Well, and this is what I really love about you share this with me, that you will take the time. You've had decades of experience in the automotive industry, and over that time, you've learned what this make and manufacture and model of a car typically needs over a period of years. And you've actually taken the time to dissect it down to an approximate cost per mile for your consumer. And this is, you had a recommendation on how people could prepare for expenses. So share that with us.
Well, typically, it depends on the make and model, what we'll budget for. But any of them are between 6 and 30 cents a mile. And again, it depends on make model. But if you can budget that for maintenance and repair, you're doing pretty well.
Well, and you were talking about one of the biggest reasons that people have catastrophic failures is the first thing to go is the neglect of their car is their regular maintenance. And it's just because they go, oh, I don't have the money for that. But you take the time to determine how many miles a year they drive and when they're going to have those intervals so they can prepare to set that money aside so when it comes up, the money is there for it, that they've budgeted for it. So you take time beyond just saying, bring it in and I'll do the job and charge you X amount of dollars. You take the time to help them prepare for taking proper care of their car. And I think that you shared with me the reason you go that route, and it's because neglect of a car costs more than maintaining it. You had a real opinion on that.
Oh, collateral damage is huge. If you ignore, we've had people ignore their oil level. The collateral damage is they lose an engine. And engines are expensive. But if you ask, if I look at 85% of my customer base, their tire pressure is low. If I ask them what their tire pressure is, they don't know.
Well, in the old days, you go get gas and they check it for you. They check your oil, and people are not doing that themselves.
No, we check everyone that comes in only because we know that 85% of them are off. That's how we know. But if somebody's not giving you a certain level of service, you need to get that.
Well, one of the reasons why you accepted our invitation is that, like I said, it crawls under your skin, and I can tell you that because we've had this conversation, and I've seen the emotion that you've shared with me about when this happens to a consumer, how much it upsets you. But you just recently had somebody who had a car, and they took it to, and we won't mention the name of the shop. And by the way, the reason we won't is because we want to make like they don't exist. And if our community treats them as such, they will cease to exist, the poor quality repair shops. And some of these are, unfortunately, even franchise businesses. And what I'm getting to is you had a young lady that brought a car to you, believe it was a Hyundai, and they had gone in and started to do some repairs and charged her hundreds of dollars and didn't even come close to the problem. And it just unnerved you. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, they came close to the problem. The problem was a noise and timing belt and water pump and other stuff, and gave her an invoice. and at the end of it said, by the way, you're going to need an engine.
So
a lot of irresponsibility toward, wow, you've just asked the customer to pay for something they're going to have to entirely replace.
And this was $700 or $800 worth of work.
Yeah.
And while they were in there, as soon as they opened it up, maybe $100 to $200 into the job, they could see there were more severe damages.
One of my guys, when he looked at the car after we got it for an inspection, opened the hood, looked, he spent no more than 15 minutes on it and said, we have a problem that's internal.
And describe how he diagnosed that externally.
Well, it was the crankshaft was moving axially about 1/4 of an inch. For those that don't know, end play on a crankshaft is normally under 25 thousandths of an inch. So to be 10 times normal specification, it's a 1/4 of an inch is obvious.
So you could tell something was wrong on the inside of that motor, and then you tore it down and you went, why did they even charge you $800 to fix this? Right there, they should have stopped. You could have determined then if you were going to do the whole job or if you were going to trade the car, sell it, junk it, whatever you had to do at that point, but at least you had the options. Instead, they actually put it all back together, took her money, and left her with an engine that still needed further repair.
Well, not only did it need further repair, it's unsafe. Anybody who's ever lost an engine, you have, if you lose a rod bearing and the rod cap comes off, goes through the oil pan, you end up with an oily mess that either ends up on your tires, which is an accident waiting to happen, and it's not safe.
Or parts flying down the freeway hitting other people behind you. I've seen that happen before.
Exactly.
What's worse is, I mean, I just saw how much this upset you, and that you cared for this individual, that you took the time to take the parts that were worn on the inside and show her. It's like there was a machine shop inside that vehicle's engine.
No, yeah, the crankshaft was machining itself a home where the main bearing web used to be.
Like an internal lathe inside of a motor.
Uh-huh.
And you showed it to me. It was unbelievable that anybody could do that level of workmanship and stay in business. And I hate to say it, but it's the reason it gives us a basis for a show like this and the opportunity to introduce businesses like yours to our community that conduct themselves with integrity and really take it personally when our community is treated this way. You actually shared with me that it's personal because you live here and you have for so many years, that these are your friends. They're your neighbors.
I'm a native here, so I've been in the trade now for almost 30 years, and it does bother me that people are not treated well for something that's the second most expensive thing they'll ever buy.
And you said to me, so how are you going to get a community to stop doing this to themselves? Because really, I'm calling the community out for being responsible for this. If they stop doing this, and they need a source like us to learn how to stop doing to themselves, these other businesses will cease to exist, and we'll have a better business climate, and more businesses like yours will get the support that they deserve, but our community will get the better products, qualities, and services as well. And it was just really extraordinary that you got that message, and you said, so how do you get people to do that? And I said, well, that's what we've taken on here at the Car Buyer Advisor. That's Dave Capurro with CNC Automotive Specialties. And Dave, how do they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of us either by phone. Our number is 329-9974, or our Facebook page is a pretty good access these days.